you doing? Good morning. This is Robert Thompson with the Robert and Christy Real Estate Team, and we're here on our coffee chat time. And thought we'd invite Adriel Esparza with Easy Fundings to just talk about the lending, what's happening in the lending right now. We've had obviously a lot of changes with the COVID-19 issue, and it seems like it is daily that we're running into issues with on the lending side, not even issues, but just all the changes and everything. But before we begin that, Adriel, do you mind giving us a little bit of background about yourself and, how long you've been in the business and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Absolutely. Well, my name is Adriel Esparza. For those of you that don't know me, I've been doing this for just got past my 20th year. So I'm in my 21st year doing mortgages since 1999. I work for a company called Easy Fundings. We are a broker and banker. And I've been partners here with Robert and Christy for about the last decade or so.
Yeah, it's been a great partnership, and appreciate all the help and advice. And I know I always give you calls at weird times of days to ask for some advice, but and appreciate that. I just want to, with everything going on, what exactly in the past here are some of the issues that, what do you see the COVID thing has happened right now in this environment?
I would say I would narrow it down to three different things, for the sake of conversation and this short conversation. Number one, the availability of programs has shrunk down significantly. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as time progresses, but just in general, the availability of different types of programs has really shrunk down. Number two, the emphasis of the need for better credit. With that reduction of that credit box, what's been sticking out like a sore thumb is, hey, if your credit's good, you can still do it. If your credit good, you can still do it. So those are the people that are really going to advance. And lastly, rates. Rates are low, but they've been crazy erratic. We've had as much in the last 30 days. We've had a range of about 1%. From low threes to low fours, back down to low threes, and you can imagine the roller coaster that could put us on. So I would say if I had to narrow it down, those are the three main things.
Okay, and just to help us all out here, when you say programs, what's a program?
Well, for example, I would say there are a couple of them that are very specific to this time. Jumbo loans. Many of our clients are in the jumbo arena. So what's a jumbo loan, right? A jumbo loan is something that's over $532,000. Well, for those of us, or a majority of I know of our clients are in the 15 corridor. Well, that's a lot, over 532,000. So jumbo loans are much more scarce than they were before. Number one. Number two, there's the new, quote unquote subprime was something called non-QM, non-qualified mortgage. So a lot of the loans that are stated income, no ratio, no, we don't verify how much you make, no income, special type of loans, mainly for the self-employed type of client. It's not like the subprime of 12 years ago where there was zero down, you just got a fog and mirror and you get a loan. A lot of the ones from right now have required 20, 25, 30% down. Well, that box has shrunk significantly. Not that it's not available. It's just nowhere near the level that it was just 2 months ago. And the other thing is, and I think this is where it kind of hurts the most for our people, especially, is the high balance VA stuff. So one of the cool things that I was doing cartwheels on at the beginning of this year.
I remember that.
You remember that? Yeah. There is no loan limit for VA loans. That means that, for example, I closed a loan in January, $950,000, zero down. I think the client came in with like 15 grand, 10 grand. I mean, but $1 million house, Now, what's happened to it now? Well, that guideline hasn't changed, but frankly, the appetite to get that kind of a mortgage on your portfolio has been not very strong, So they just make it by default, because a lot of the investors out there make it more expensive to get. It becomes a detriment sometimes to our veterans.
So that it's mainly the cost to, even though it's a zero down, but there's more costs associated with it because the risk is higher.
Okay? Absolutely. So for example, if on that same example, right, 950. So let's say you normally, right, that, like, I think I got that client at 3.25, no MI, again, zero down, 950,000. So if I had to price it out today, it'd probably be a point and a half for that same situation. Well,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but what's a point?
A point is a percent, right? A percent of a loan amount. So for sake of conversation, again, 900,000 means a $9,000 cost to get that rate. So point and a half, that means I'm saying, 9,000 to 13,500 in cost to get that rate. Wow. Now, so that's part of my job, right? Where that may, that's still probably worth it, right? Compared to putting, 10, 20% down on a jumbo loan. And in fact, Chase came out with guidance recently this week, I believe, where they're not doing any purchases with less than 20% down. Any less than 20%. There's no such thing for Chase right now. Wells has really tightened up. I don't think they're doing any government loans. So there's a lot of, again, everybody has their niche of what pond they want to play in right now, and that's where I get to dance.
All right. So as far as the risk factors, so the investors are basically trying to mitigate some of this risk by making the FICO scores a little bit higher, right, to qualify for a mortgage, because they see that financial history is more of a risk. So what does that look like right now?
So in general, and this is obviously all statistically, right? They've, for example, FHA, we used to be able to do, and by the way, to be very clear, we could still do them. It's just that the amount of investors available that will do it is significantly less. So about 500,000 or so, or excuse me, 500 FICO is where we used to go to with like 10% down. Now you have to go to around a 640 score to be able to play. Why? Because they have seen that people that have less than a 640 score tend to be more delinquent on their mortgages.
Okay. And is it? I've heard rumors that that's even going to go up. Do you anticipate that happening as well?
Everybody is making a decision. So a term that is very common right now, that was very common about 8-9 years ago, is a term called an overlay.
Okay.
So an overlay. So there might be the base guidelines. So for example, FHA is still, hey, we can go down to less than 580 score and whatever, 10% down. Great. That's what FHA says. The investor themselves, they might be like, hey, I'm going to, that's nice that you can do that, but I'm going to put an overlay on that guideline to say, okay, well, yes, you can do it with a 580 score, but I'm going to not do it for less than a 640 score. Some investors have a 620, some have a 680. So everybody has their own appetite with regards to what they want to invest in. And then not just that, but also that's a whole other conversation, which is the servicers and what they want to buy. Everybody wants the vanilla loans, right? Because those are the ones that are going to perform.
So you have, it's basically like a 3-point line in the basketball. That's the guidelines, and basically the investors are moving the 3-point line back with their overlays. Is that so just making it a little bit more challenging?
But they're basically saying the 3-point line is a half court. Absolutely. Wow. You 3-pointer, it's a half court. So as long as you can make that, you're good. And so again, that box is shrinking. So that's why I'm, having great credit is a very important to take advantage of what's coming up. Okay.
What about what's happening to everybody out there? The unemployment issue. People getting laid off, and how do you think that's going to threaten things here over the next? Or what do you see as the biggest threat to home values, basically, over the next 12 months?
There's two specific things. One of them you touched right on it is unemployment. Unemployment right now, they have something called initial jobless claims, right? And that comes out every Thursday, and they say how many people have filed for unemployment. Well, this past week, I believe it was like 5 million. The previous week was 6 million. And when you think about when they come out with what's called the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate comes out the first Friday of the month, right? So we're a couple weeks out, obviously, from May to figure out what it was for May. But when they come out with that number, it has to do with the people that were in the labor force. Well, that's defined as the people that have been working the last 12 months. So when you combine the people that haven't worked in the last 12 months, right, filed the claims and whatnot, and the people that haven't had a job for over a year, that number is up at around 27 million. So the true unemployment right now is right around 17%. It's a significant number, very significant number. And all we need is one more week of another let's call it another 5 million in unemployment claims, we're at 20%. So needless to say, that's just basic economics, right? People need a job to be able to buy a home. So the people that have a job and have steady jobs, those guys are going to do well. But that I could see with the buyer pool shrinking, that could of course impact values. The other thing that I would argue is a bigger thing, believe it or not, than that is something that has to do with the forbearance and the desire to service. What the heck am I talking about? So
explain what forbearance is.
Sure. A forbearance, in short, is a pause. It's not. I always say, forbearance is not forgiveness, right? It's really a pause. It's a pause on payments. It doesn't mean that you don't owe the money. It just means you don't owe it right now. Now the kicker is, what are they going to do with it? Because the way forbearance works right now, you can be on a forbearance plan. Let's call it for 5 or 6 months, $2,000 payment. So for sake of conversation, let's call it a $12,000. So what happens with that $12,000 when the forbearance plan is over? How the rule is right now, you pay it at the 7th month.
You pay the $12,000 at the 7th month?
Absolutely. That's the way the plan is right now, unless you have a more specific plan. So here's the kicker. FHA came out with a plan where if you do qualify for a forbearance, 6 to 12 months or whatever, they'll tack it onto the back of the loan.
Okay.
So I would say that makes sense, right? And there's a plan, right? There's a plan to that. But the issue was when they came out talking about forbearance, 3 weeks ago, it's like saying, hey, Robert, you don't have to make your payment. Well, Sham, you don't have to pay me. So you're talking about other people's money. So what on right now is there's something called the FHFA, which is what controls. It's the body that controls Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They haven't had that determination as to who's going to bail out the servicer. Because if you think about it for a second, if you've got $1 million, why would you do a mortgage if there's the chance you're not going to get paid for a year?
Right.
Just logically, right?
Right.
So until there's a plan for that, which all the lobbyists in our world have been pushing for, you're talking about a decimation of the way mortgages work and the ability to get a mortgage. So you're talking about the mortgages available going down from 80%. It's a significant amount. Think about the nut that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is. So that's a big deal. I am optimistic that there's going to be some kind of solution because of how big of a deal it would be. But as of the moment, as of today, there is no resolution on that. But I would say those are the two things that could affect values.
Okay. So people just have to walk softly when they talk about going into a forbearance, depending on the program that they have, and make sure that they're really clear with their lender on what that exactly means, whether they have to, it's not forgiven. I think that's the biggest thing, because I think a lot of people that I've talked to about it, just the conversations, people think that is a forgiveness, but it's not. It's just like you had stated, a pause. All right. So, you want to say hi? Come on in. Yeah. This is, everybody knows Christy.
Oh, hi, everybody. I just wanted to say hi, and I'm off to do a showing real quick, but I'm also wanting to remind you guys to tune back in at 12 o'clock for our lunch and learn as we tour one of our other listings. So you guys have fun. Thanks for joining us.
So which house is that going to be?
We'll be at 342 Selkirk.
All right.
Awesome. Okay.
Beautiful house, by the way.
Yep. Bye.
All right. Okay, cool.
Thanks, Christy.
So, based off of this information, obviously, just as a homeowner, those are concerns for all of us, especially the self-employed. It does definitely cause us pause, right, on how that all handles. But, I feel confident that things are going to get back into normal, some really, hopefully sooner than later. But from a lending perspective, I'm personally thinking right now is a really good time, strike while the fire's hot, so to speak. Rates are really good, and as far as home prices is still pretty steady. So what are your thoughts on all that? Do you think it's a good time to buy now, or wait, or what are the risks?
That's a great question, because I always look at when I do my consultations, I always like to give, hey, look, this is the pretty and this is the ugly, and it's our job as consultants to be careful there. It's our jobs as
second time today. I haven't spilled my coffee.
That's why it's coffee talk, right? It's our job as consultants to give you the bad, the good, the good, bad, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And so part of it is, okay, so if there's a potential for price drops, then is it still a good time to buy? It's a fair question. And I'm going to say the answer is yes. And the reason for that is because I believe that your payment right now is still on sale. You see, and so there's a big misconception that, okay, well, if prices drop, 10%, I'll be in the clear and I just roll with it that way, because you can't assume that the rates are going to be the same. And I think it's fair to know or to think about all the billions of dollars that have been pumped into this economy. You're asking for future inflation,
right?
Future inflation to have money be worth more, rates will eventually have to go up. Eventually, right? So when you think about it mathematically, if you've got like I did some fuzzy math on a home. Let me bring it up so that I could at least have it up my numbers here. I did some math on a home that was like 445, okay, with the 3% FHA rate, okay, and the payment was like $2,700. Well, let's say
out a little bit there.
I'm sorry, one more time. I froze out. Did I freeze out? Now you froze out. Can you see me? Can you guys see me? Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me, Robert? It went dead. Yeah, everybody quiet. So shoot down.
All right. Well, I apologize, everyone. My coffee actually ran out that runs this show. I ran out of espresso, so anyway, yeah, I had some technical difficulties, so this coffee bar is back open, just in a different locale, and I have a barista that's kind of going to be running it in the background. So anyway, go ahead, Adriel. I apologize for that, but you were going to share your screen. Did you still want to do that? And you were talking about how
I could, but I think that the biggest thing I want to communicate is that and I'll go into like kind of the general numbers. What I was talking about. So to reiterate the question really quick, you mentioned, hey, is right now still a good time to buy, and kind of what's the difference of buying now versus later? A lot of people think that a price drop is significant when it comes to payment. I would argue right now, this moment in time, your payment is on sale, okay? And with your payment being on sale, what the heck does that mean? That means that with the rates being where they're at, that trumps any benefit that any potential price drop would have. So, for example, if you were to have a rates that go up, let's call it 2%, which I wouldn't say is too far-fetched. I think in the short term, we're going to have, I would say, and when I say short term, in the balance of the year, I think we're going to have lower rates. But eventually with, think about all the stimulus, all the money that's come into our economy in the last month. That's a recipe for inflation, So down the road, there's going to have to be a motivation for people to buy mortgage bonds, which is what rates are based off of, not what the Fed does. So when that happens, rates would go up. Now, let's just say conversation that, rates go up 2% and we have a 10% price drop. You're talking about on a home. I had some numbers here where that a payment right now for a home that's $445, lower down payment would be like $2,700. That same house, 10% price drop, so a $400,000 price, but with 5% rate, you're talking about a $2,885 payment. So overall, think about it. Even though your price went down to $400, your payment went up $200.
Right. It's just simple math. Yeah.
It's just. So I would say the people right now, I think a very important point that I have to make right now with regards to buying right now, it has to do with how, what, and who. Okay. How you're going to buy it, with who you're going to buy it with, because right now, obviously, I'm talking to professionals right now. So you have to work with somebody that understands how to negotiate, how to navigate this market. Also, the where. I personally, I wouldn't buy a home that is in this, 29 Palms. You have to buy somewhere where there's jobs, where there's business, where there's industry. I would buy things that are SFRs. I wouldn't buy any manufactured homes, for example. I think that you have to buy where the most stability is. I think eventually you should have money saved up so that you, either through a cash out refinance or just, kind of hoarding your eggs a little bit. I think within the next year and a half, eventually the commercial space is going to be, there's going to be some good deals in the commercial space. Think about the advent of what we're doing right now, that we're working from home, right? There's so much office space that I think is going to be really weaned down. As all of that progresses, it all comes down to the same thing: making sure you have money, making sure your credit is tight, and you'll be able to take up all these opportunities, especially right now.
Okay. So, in our world, in the residential world, some people,
can you hear me, Robert?
have to move. They have to go somewhere. They have to. Am I frozen? I feel like running out of espresso beans again.
Hello, it's your barista. We can still see you, Robert, if you want to keep telling us a little bit about what's going on here.
Okay, can you? Are you good? Because it seems like I'm freezing up a little bit. I'm having total lack of coffee power here.
We refilled the beans, and I think we can see Adriel and Robert now.
Okay, awesome. So I guess the question I have, Adriel, is like in our residential world, you had mentioned about some other commercial stuff and that, but in the residential world, we have people that are talking about, well, I think I want to wait. I want to ride this thing out. I want to wait before I do anything. I know just in our real estate world right now, inventory is still down. Interest rates are still really good. And to me, it's we're getting offers. I know that just on a house that we're going to be doing on a lunch and learn today, we got an offer on the house. So I mean, it's so things are moving. As long as the homes are getting exposed and things like that, I think it's a really positive time. And to me, I'm just concerned about waiting. That's all. And I think that on that and I hate to see interest rates go up. And it just concerns me. I'd rather see people, if they have the ability to do something now, that they should do it now instead of wait, with the risk of, one, if the market gets flooded with homes, that's going to totally change things, and it's not that it's going to be that great for buyers either. And so, I got to go back a little bit on a couple things. One, you had mentioned the jumbo loans, Adriel, and that there's a limited number of investors out there. What are some other options for people if, like out here, if you have a $650,000 house out here in the Inland Empire and the conforming loan limit is 510, they're going to have to come in with a significant amount of down payment. And if you can't do the jumbo loan, which is what we were able to do before, what are some other options that somebody could use to be able to get into a home?
Sure. So in our world, we call them piggyback loans, where there's a way to split up the debt that you would need. So based on your example, right, at 650, we can go up to about a 90% loan to value. So what the heck does that mean? That means that there's a 10% spread from the price to the ability to get loans. In that example, it would have a loan amount of around 585, right? Total. Obviously, 585 is more than 510. So what you would do is, or what I would do in that case, is split the loan, where you have one loan at around 510. I have to do the math to see where where it's the most optimal for the client, But you would have one loan at, let's call it 510, and then the other one for the rest of the other 75,000. And that's a good option. I think it's a really good option. Those are lines of credit. Okay, generally they're always going to be a line of credit. A line of credit is like a fat credit card, and it is technically adjustable. Okay, now, and the other side of that too is right now, as you guys, many of you have heard, the Fed cut the rate down to close to zero. Well, as we always talk about in the mortgage world, the Fed rate normally has nothing to do with mortgage rates, and 99% of the time that's the case, except in the case of a line of credit, where it's actually a direct effect on a mortgage. It usually runs off the prime rate. The prime rate is 3% above that. And then there's a profit margin, and that's kind of where the math goes, okay? So right now, obviously, with the Fed rate being at zero, it's the lowest the payment could possibly be on the line of credit. So a common concern with that is it's adjustable, right, Robert? So what happens there? Well, the good news is that it's only we're not talking about the bigger loan, right? We're not talking about the $500,000. We're talking about the $75,000 loan. So even if it does change, you're talking about, let's say it changes 1 whole percent. Great. $60 a month. That's on 1 full percent. So I think it makes sense in the sense that it's a recyclable type of loan. Just like a fat credit card, if you pay down that balance, you can reuse it. So a lot of good benefits to using that as a jumbo loan buster.
Okay. Is there any for like first-time home buyers out there? Is there any assistance anymore? Is there anything left in the down payment assistance arena?
The quick answer is yes. Again, as one of my original points, where a lot of the investors are shying away from, they're trying to decide what sandbox they want to play in, right? And as that progresses, just like jumbo loans, some people don't want to play there. Some people also don't want to play in the down payment assistance arena. That said, what has happened is a lot of the minimum credit requirements are going up, right, from 620 to around 680. I have a couple that are still at 640, but again, not as plentiful. There are loans where there are grants. There are loans where there are what we call silent seconds, right? They go behind the main loan to cover a portion of the closing costs and the down payment. They're good loans. They're good loans. One thing to always remember with a down payment assistance loan is that it's tit for tat. A lot of people think that, okay, great, rates are 3.25%, 3%, let's say 3.5%, right? That's for people that are coming in with a down payment. When you're doing down payment assistance, there's almost an automatic bump in whatever that rate's going to be. So just know that, and that's part of my job, of course, is to help you navigate through that. Hey, this is what it looks like with down payment assistance. This is what it looks like without. Hey, this way you're going to come in with about $10,000 less, but your payment's going to be like this. And that's my job, is to help you balance all that out. But are they still available? Yeah. And if you can still get cheap money, okay, great. It's 1% higher. Great. Now we're having a 4% conversation. Okay, but if you're coming in with $4,000,
right? Yeah, still a good deal.
It's still good, man. It's still good, man.
I'm going to revert over to our barista. Is there any questions that anybody else has posed out there Raquel?
That would be barista.
Barista, okay.
So we did have a question for you, Adriel. We have somebody asking what you anticipate or maybe think rates are going to be doing here in the future down the line, maybe later on in the year here.
It's a fantastic question. There's so many moving parts of this, and the biggest X factor to me in the last month that probably changed my position. So if you were to ask this question a month and a half ago, I would say that rates would be set. And when I say in this range, I'd say about a 0.5% range, somewhere in the threes, okay, over the next year and a half. My concern is that with all of the stimulus money that has come into the economy, that's a recipe for inflation, and that's the arch enemy of mortgage bonds. That's the kryptonite. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but I think as good news progresses, especially in regards to potential vaccines or solutions in everything that's going on with COVID, as that progresses, as we get back on the road and the economy's back on the way, I think that's when we're going to see the timeline accelerate for rates going up. So I think the rest of this year, I think given all the knowledge that we have as of right now, right, with regards to what we're seeing in the news and the expectations, stuff like that. I think that this is what is normal for now for this year. I think going into next year, I don't know. I believe that's something in the fives within the next 2 years. I think is reasonable. I really do.
All right. We do have another question in regards to this being an election year. Do either of you think that this being an election year is going to change anything with prices or rates? Someone is asking.
Adriel, you go on that one first, and then I'll follow up.
Sure. So the last election cycle, when Trump was elected, I think we can all agree that it was a surprise, right? It was not expected. And when the market bakes in information or thought, it's based off of the premonition. But if that changes, people don't know how to react to change. So I think that the fact that Trump is generally pro-business and whatnot is going to be pro the economy, pro all that. I think that's going to, my personal opinion, now that we know kind of how that's going to work out. I mean, whatever your opinion is on him, that's irrelevant. It's more about this conversation. I think that's going to maintain the rates on the lower side. Depending on what Biden's economic position is, I know Bernie had a specific position, and that there would be some concern there with regards to the economy. With Biden specifically, I would have to research what his positions are to be able to answer you intelligently on that. So I would have to find that out. Bernie, I would know for sure. But Joe Biden, I need to research that a little bit more. But that said, I think that again through the balance of the year, I still think rates are going to be on the lower side.
Yeah, it seems traditionally over all these election years, not a lot has typically happened. There wasn't a lot of movement one way or another. I think economically, I think people kind of wanted to keep things status quo. Would you agree with that on a typical election year?
Correct. Now, again, the last election year or the last election cycle being the crazy exception, frankly, because nobody expected Trump to win. We had a bump in the following month and a half of a percent and a half in rate. I mean, we were having 3.25 conversations, and now we're having 4.75 conversations within a matter of a month and a half, because the market was adjusting to a new president because they weren't planning on him, you know. And so the lack of knowledge or the surprise or whatever, that's what drives markets. So now that said, that was for that period of time. And now it's been pretty much at least half of the time of his presidency, the rates have been back in that lower realm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it was more of the impact of the not knowing or the surprise that really affected the rates. I wouldn't say it's the election cycle itself, which I think is your point, Robert. It's not the election cycle itself. It's really just the surprise for what we were not expecting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and then on the real estate side, I concur with. I kind of feel the same way about the whole thing. Obviously, this is unprecedented. Or we've never had this happen before. Where we're at now, regardless of election cycle or not, I think that's kind of the bigger factor right now. Right. Election or no election. Yeah, obviously, I think there's some thoughts on next year and who's in. It's going to have a big, huge impact on where this economy goes, but it's hard to say because we've never encountered what we're encountering right now, and I think this is more of an impact than the election itself.
I think a lot of.
I know it's not really a good answer, but I don't have to.
Yeah, I think the only thing I have to add on that is each of the nominees or the president nominees' stance on international affairs. So their relationship with China, in particular. I would have to research that more to give you a more intelligent answer, but I know that's going to be a big deal as to how things run. So,
right. Anything else? Any other questions?
We have one last question, and it's directed a little bit more towards you, Robert. What are happening with prices here in Corona right now? That's what somebody was wondering with everything that's going on. Have you seen any fluctuations at all?
It's been holding. I would say it's probably holding pretty steady. We've had, obviously, the days on market has been extended a little bit because it kind of everybody was put on pause for a little while. We have seen movement, but as far as pricing, I think there's just a little bit of an adjustment. I think when we walked into this year, along with what was happening on the lending side and what was happening economically, this was going to be a bang up year because there was a lot of movement, a lot of momentum, a lot of things that were just falling into place, and then all of a sudden this thing hit. And so as far as pricing and people pricing their homes, they've been pricing their homes at what it was, when it was like that. However, when you really look at the stats, homes are selling. Homes are going into pending. So, again, the people who want to buy are buying, and the people who are wanting to sell are selling. So when you match those two up, things have been holding pretty steady. I think that now is not a time to, hey, my neighbor listed their house for 500 and I got a granite countertops and they don't, so I'm going to list mine for 510. That those times are a little bit over. So we're seeing a little bit of just, people have to be wise about how they're pricing their homes, and knowing that the pool of buyers has has definitely diminished. Is there a buyer out there? Oh, absolutely. We're getting calls all the time and requests for showings on our homes. So when people are looking at the virtual tours and the virtual open houses, we know that the activity's there. We know that the buyers are out there. As far as pricing overall, I think it's paused right now. It's been pretty steady. We haven't seen a huge significant drop in prices. You look at statistically over years, you're going to see from 1 month to the next, it just keep going up and down as far as 1 month to the next. So I think we're going to find out a lot more here in the next month or two what's going to happen with pricing.
All right, very good. Well, thank you for joining us in our coffee shop today. I think that's all of the questions, at least from the barista over here that I can see.
That's awesome. Thank you everyone for attending, and for our coffee chat, we'll be doing other ones here. Join us when you get a chance. We'll let everybody know. We'll put it out on Facebook, and we want to thank everyone for participating, and we look forward to talking with you or seeing you next time. Thank you. Thanks, Adriel, for your help.
No problem. I got you.